This is DWBR of the Philippine Broadcasting Service. 104.3 on FM. Music and talk. Nice and easy.
The time is 7 o'clock. Good evening. This is the PBS Network News. Today, September 17, 2013. In the news, dozens of people held hostage by Moro rebels were finally reunited with their families amid a military offensive. But the rebels kidnapped the city's police chief, Senior Superintendent Jose Chiquito Malayo, and his men. After a relentless military offensive involving helicopter rocket attacks, at least 149 people escaped last night, while some were freed early today. The fighting has shut down Zamboanga City for more than a week now. And this just in, Zamboanga City Police Chief Senior Superintendent Chiquito Malayo is now safe and in safe hands and has left the area where he was initially brought by the MNLF members. Local police officials say Malayo was able to persuade 30 MNLF members to surrender. Interior Secretary Maroja says Malayo is with 23 MNLF members and that they were on their way back to the city. Early today, Malayo attempted to secure the release of some hostages in Barangay Mampang. It was there where MNLF members abducted him. The MNLF later confirmed they had abducted him. Malacanang maintains that the Aquino administration is taking a well-coordinated strategy in dealing with the crisis in Zamboanga City. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda was responding to a reported statement of former President Fidel Ramos for the government to get its act together to resolve the standoff. Marie Ruiz has more.
Mr. Ramos said only the President as Chief Executive and Commander-in-Chief should call the shots. Lacerda said the former President should identify the people whose unnecessary intervention in the conflict has only made it worse. Mr. Ramos advised the government to put the team in order so they can succeed in cleaning up the mess. Lacerda denied that the President has allowed infighting among his men to botch attempts to end the standoff. He said the MNLF mess should not be attributed solely to the Aquino administration. The palace official also stressed that the forthcoming peace accord with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front would result in the creation of the Bangsamoro and would address the deficiencies of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao.
Former President Ramos called Ging Deles and said, you're doing very well. Do not get distracted by the incident in Zamboanga. Tuloy niyo yung framework agreement. I support you there. So, klarong-klaro, I cannot comment on what he said, but klarong-klaro that former President Ramos and, Secretary Guingderas and former President Ramos can verify this statement because they were the only ones who spoke to each other. But this is what Secretary Guingderas told me, that you guys are doing well. Now, on the second issue about we handed you the silver platter, I'm sure President Ramos knows that we were not the immediate successor to his administration. In fact, the Bangsamoro Framework Agreement is building on the gains of the peace of the 1996 final peace agreement. So that's all that we can say.
Marie Peña Ruiz for PBS News.
The military says government forces are now in control of 70% of the areas being held by the Moro rebels in Zamboanga City. Government troops are currently doing constriction operation to limit the movement of the MNLF Miswari faction. Alvin Baltasar reports.
Members of the MNLF Miswari breakaway group's world is getting smaller as the Sambo standoff now is on its 9th day. AFP Public Affairs Office Chief Lieutenant Colonel Ramon Zagala said that 70% of areas that were conquered by the rebels were already recovered by the military troops and that only 30% are under the control of the MNLF group. But the official stressed that military operation will be intensified using the calibrated response approach. Zagala said that they are carefully performing their operation as they are considering first and foremost the safety of the remaining hostages. Alvin Baltasar for PBS News.
Malacanang defends the presence of President Aquino in Zamboanga since Friday as government forces fight Moro rebels who siege several barangays. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda says the business of governance is not affected even if the president is in Zamboanga. Marie Ruiz with this report.
Malacanang assures that the business of governance is not affected even if President Benigno Aquino III is still in Zamboanga City. Presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda says the president is in touch with Executive Secretary Jojo Ochoa and other cabinet members on other affairs of the state. Lacerda explained that as Commander-in-Chief, the president is in Zamboanga to give directives and support to the armed forces of the Philippines and Philippine National Police because the government has taken the military option. He adds the president serves as an inspiration to the men in uniform as well as to the local government of Zamboanga. Lacerda says Zamboangueños appreciate the presence of the president in their city. The palace will not announce up to when the president will remain in Zamboanga City for security reasons.
He's there. He's the commander-in-chief. There is a military option being exercised right now. He gives support, he gives direction, so he plays a big role. He has inspired the armed forces there, the police forces, and also the city government. And so it shows the confidence that he also has in the armed forces, and also the people of Zamboanga City appreciate the presence of the president during this time of crisis.
Marie Peña Ruiz for PBS News.
In other developments, House Speaker Sonny Belmonte says the Freedom of Information Bill will be taken up and voted during the 16th Congress, but the Speaker says a push from Malacanang would help this important measure to get its approval. He said Malacanang has not certified the bill as urgent. Earlier, Presidential Legislative Liaison Officer Manny Mamba says the FOI bill is one of 17 bills to be presented to members of Congress during the LEDAC meeting. According to Mamba, the 17 proposed measures were chosen from the list of 51 submitted by the different cabinet clusters based on their studies. The FOI bill is again being pushed by various sectors due to the pork barrel scam to further promote transparency and accountability in government. The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee will ask authorities to allow detained businesswoman Janet Napoles to testify into the alleged 10 billion peso pork barrel scam on Thursday. Senator Francis Escudero, who initiated the Senate probe, reiterated his desire to invite Napoles in the hearing. Escudero said Napoles, who allegedly masterminded the pork scam, has no choice but to appear in the Senate if the court itself will order her to do so. He said Napoles may invoke her right to remain silent, but only to some questions that would implicate her. Despite the charges filed against Napoles and 37 others linked in the scam, Escudero said the Senate should continue with its own investigation, saying it was the only venue where people can watch and listen to the pork scam investigation. In light of recent events in Mindanao, Senator Antonio Trillanes pushes for the realignment of Vice President Binay's pork barrel to the intelligence funds of the police and the military. Jojo Ismael with the details.
Trillanes, chairman of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security, said the situation in Mindanao highlights the need to augment the military and police intelligence fund. Under the proposal of Trillanes, additional 100 million pesos will be given each to AFP and the PNP as part of the 2014 intelligence funds. Last week, Vice President Binay asked Congress to cancel his 200 million pesos pork barrel allocation for 2014. Trillanes, a former Navy officer, is the principal author of the revised AFP modernization law. For PBS News, George Ismael, Senate.
Malacanang confirms that President Aquino raises to 2 million pesos the reward for information leading to the arrest of the suspects behind the murder of advertising executive Kay Davantes. The PNP and the Las Piñas city government had originally put up 500,000 peso reward that will lead to the early arrest of the killers. According to presidential spokesman Edwin Lacerda, the president called up Executive Secretary Jojo Ochoa to raise the reward. Devantes's mangled body was found under a bridge in Dasmariñas, Cavite on September 7, just hours after she left her office in Taguig. Investigators theorize Devantez knew her killer or killers and that her case may be a crime of passion. In other news, a palace official believes that there are influential people behind the operation of illegal black sand mining in Cagayan Valley. We hear this report from Marie Ruiz.
Presidential Legislative Liaison Office Chief Manuel Mamba said aside from Cagayan Valley, the illegal activity is also prevalent in Zambales, Ilocos, and some provinces in Central Visayas. Mamba refused to disclose yet who these personalities are, but hinted that they could be senators or congressmen. The PLLO chief pointed out that ordinary people won't have the guts to illegally operate if they are not protected by officials. Mamba has been directed by President Aquino to investigate complaints against black sand mining in Cagayan Valley and other provinces in the north. Mamba was also instructed by the President to submit recommendations to the Office of the President and the Mining Coordinating Council. Among the recommendations of Mamba are the creation of a task force against black sand mining and to stop all forms of black sand mining in the country. Marie Peña Ruiz for PBS News.
Neophyte Senator Nancy Binay files a bill seeking to protect legitimate NGOs from being used as conduits in illegal transactions, particularly in money laundering activities. We hear more from Jojo Ismael.
Binay said her Senate Bill number 1650 is intended to further strengthen the anti-money laundering law of 2001 in the light of findings by the Commission on Audit, COA, that government money was misused with the help of bogus NGOs. At the onset of the Priority Development Assistance Fund, PDAP scam, COA exposed that a number of NGOs were allegedly used as conduits to divert public funds to certain individuals. To counter this, Binay said an amendment to Republic Act 9160 or the Anti-Money Laundering Act is necessary, urgent, to protect legitimate foundations or non-profit organizations from such illicit enterprises. The lady senator added that among the amendments in the AMLA law is the inclusion of the NGOs, non-profit organizations authorized to receive donations or funds from government agencies and local government units among the covered entities in the bill. The proposed amendments empowers the Anti-Money Laundering Council to file a petition with the Securities and Exchange Commission for the dissolution of the NGOs proven to be involved in money laundering. For PBS News, George Ismael, Sen.
Finally, in news abroad, the French foreign minister is visiting Moscow to try to persuade Russia to support the UN Security Council resolution on Syria. Earlier, UN weapons inspectors said the nerve gas sarin was used against civilians on a relatively large scale in a suburb of Damascus last month. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon described it as a war crime. France is now trying to win support for a UN resolution with the threat of serious consequences. But Russia, which is Syria's strongest ally, says the government of President Bashar al-Assad should first be given the chance to give up its chemical weapons. And with that, we end the PBS Network News today, the 17th day of September 2013. I'm Maju Encomienda Ramos.
This is Business Radio.